The Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit is sponsored by James Oliver Coffee Company at jamesolivercoffee.com. James Oliver is a second-generation family-owned and Detroit-based coffee roaster, offering 19 different blends of freshly roasted coffee. The company pioneered link temperature roasting, and they source the best beans from around the world to create an outstanding coffee experience, no matter which beans you choose. To start, try the Alma Mater blend. James Oliver Coffee gives $5 for each bag of its Alma Mater blend to the Detroit Public Schools Foundation. And don't forget, use the promo code CFSHOW, that's CFSHOW, to get 15% off your first order. James Oliver Coffee, available at select grocery stores in Metro Detroit and, of course, at jamesolivercoffee.com. Remember, use the promo code CFSHOW to get 15% off your first order. That's jamesolivercoffee.com. Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to the week that was on Deadline Detroit. I am your host, Craig Foley. Glad to have you with me today. And as always, I have four esteemed panelists joining me here. And I use that term rather loosely, but I appreciate everybody being here. Nancy Derringer of Deadline Detroit, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Always great.
Alan Lengel, our co-founder and editor at Deadline. Thank you for being here, sir.
Hey, thanks for. I feel like we're on Hollywood Squares.
Well, it is kind of like Hollywood Squares. Who's Paul Lynn today? We'll make that Greg Bowens is in the center square, kind of. Greg Bowens, of course, local PR expert, and of course has his own company, Greg Bowens PR. So thank you for being here. And attorney Todd Perkins has joined us once again, and also another business that he is part of, Lynette's Shrimp House over in Highland Park. He's an entrepreneur, family business. Gotta love it.
I'll attest to the great fried shrimp there.
Are you
and the fries?
inheritor of the Dot and Etta's?
Well,
thing?
remember it was Dot and Etta's and Miley and Miley's. This storefront is actually a former Miley and Miley storefront, but you're hearkening back to the 70s and 80s and 90s when they kind of when they petered out. The legacy, they didn't have a legacy. The kids grew up, went to college, and got jobs, and so they didn't want to run the business.
As somebody who only moved here in 2005, the only thing I know about Dot and Etta's is what I read in Elmore Leonard novels. But that was like that was Isaiah Washington's great walk-off line in Out of Sight, where he said, get down to Dot Nettas and get us some shrimp.
Well, Dot Nettas, there was one on Mack Avenue that was always a good stop-off place on the way home. So.
And Miley and Miley.
Okay.
Okay, now more on the history of shrimp shacks in Detroit. Let's see. Let's talk about the week that we just had. I mean, it's been very, very strange. We had the Supreme Court hearings, of course, for Amy Coney Barrett. We'll get into that in just a little bit, but let's start with last night, because last night we had dueling town hall meetings. Of course, the in-person debate was scrapped between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. It was proposed to be a virtual event, which Donald Trump rejected. So Joe Biden went ahead and made arrangements to have his town hall meeting. Then NBC decided it was a good idea to put Donald Trump on at the exact same time on a different network. So you had to sort of choose last night which one you were going to watch. Now, I watched Joe Biden first, and then I went back and watched Donald Trump afterwards. And I have to say, and this is something that I was telling you guys before we went on the air, when I watched this, Donald Trump physically and mentally just wears you out watching this stuff. I mean, it was confrontational from the beginning with Savannah Guthrie, who held her own like nobody else has against Donald Trump.
She didn't hold her own. She ran the show.
Exactly. And it was great to see that. I like the fact that somebody was holding him to account, but I mean, at the same time, what a contrast between these two candidates last night. I mean, it was hearkening back to the old days when presidential candidates actually talked about policy when I was watching Joe Biden. What did everybody else think? Because Alan, you were watching Trump while I was watching Biden.
I was going back and forth. I was switching back and forth. I thought it was amazing that Trump just dodged the questions about the QAnon, the whole thing about the conspiracy theories about the Osama bin Laden operation. And she said, "Why did you tweet that?" And he goes, "Well, I just retweeted it. It wasn't. I just let people decide on their."
Yeah, goes, I'll let the people decide.
She goes, "You can't just tweet. You're like not somebody's just crazy uncle," which was funny. There was something. I can't remember if somebody sent something to Mary Trump saying, I think he may be something.
Yeah, she's like, actually, he is somebody's crazy uncle.
He is a crazy uncle.
Well, here's the problem with that, though. She did a great job, but as a lawyer, I would have gone a little bit further to asking him, does he have any accountability or any liability for information that he disseminates that's taken from what's considered to be the leader of the free world? I mean, that question. It's almost we only fall short. Because she had so much to do in that interview, she just couldn't lay on that one point. But she dealt with it well. I mean, he's just to talk about a retweet and not having any responsibility for a retweet. I mean, come on.
Well, you talk about liability and Trump.
Responsibility for the coronavirus. So why should he take responsibility for a retweet?
Well, everything in his business history suggests that liability is a word that he doesn't understand.
Yeah. Well, if you understand,
he understands. He just doesn't care.
If you understand a narcissist, they never apologize and they never take responsibility. They never admit they're wrong, and that's just part of his personality. It's part of it's so ingrained in the hard drive there. You're never going to change it with him.
Well, yeah, let me say this. The one of the things that I thought about the dueling town halls there was, I'd turn to Trump and I'd be like, and my hair's on fire and I'm grabbing a drink. And I'm like, oh man, I picked the wrong time to quit smoking. And then I flip over to Biden and I go, this is kind of calm, having a conversation. Then you go back to Trump and you're like, and I think that, those two things are symptomatic of what's going on. It's which world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in crazy land with Trump where QAnon and stuff is sort of legitimized? Or do you want to, live in a land where, like Alan said, you have like a policy discussion about stuff going on? And when it came to I know, right? When it came to race, it was interesting on both of their answers. Again, Biden goes into a deep explanation, talks about the 94 crime bill, talks to the brother that asked him the question, and, lays it out like, look, you buy a house and it's going to be immediately devalued because of the color of your skin. And you're going to have all of these hurdles to overcome. When you listen to Trump, he's like, it's the lowest unemployment on blacks ever. It's great. You know what I mean? And so I think that that those are some telling things about the two, and it's just, where do you want to be? Do you want to be or do you want to be
It goes a step further. A step further than that. This is what makes me embarrassed of people who are from other countries for me to say I'm an American. The very fact that he has a platform. He's a reprobate. He's a criminal. I mean, I know that before everybody's free until innocent until proven guilty. But again, some of the stuff that he's done, the fact that he even has a platform, shame on NBC for just giving him a platform and stealing ratings from ABC. Just on they really just did it almost flippantly. This guy says he wants to be on TV. They give him that platform. This is ridiculous. We understand what Fox does. We understand what they do, and that they sell crazy, and they're in the business of selling crazy. That's what they do. But NBC, you're supposed to be somebody who people look up to. I love MSNBC. I like ABC News. But that says something. That's something saying something about Americans in general. The fact that, we said it in previous times before. Hillary may have gotten 65 million votes. He's still got 62 million votes. If he gets that many votes, even though I think he's going to lose, if he gets that many votes this time around, that's shameful.
Well, the vote question is important, and I think it gets to what Alan was saying about him not wanting to actually piss off the QAnon people who might have been watching the thing last night. You realize that he, of course, doesn't want to distance himself from those people because he needs every single one of their votes if he is going to somehow pull off another upset win this time around. He needs every one of those people to be energized and show up to vote, because if they don't, if they tune out, he's going to lose. And so the fact that he couldn't even, I loved his answer. Well, hey, I know that they're against pedophilia. And I love the fact that Savannah Guthrie said, yeah, but do you believe that there's a satanic democratic cult that wants to drink the blood of children? This is what the QAnon people believe. And the fact that this is actually part of our discourse right now, it speaks volumes about Trump. And
Right.
it speaks volumes about what he has done to the political discourse in this country. And what Greg was saying too, what show do you want to watch? That's what the question they were asking. What do you want to watch for the next 4 years? Do you want to watch the McNeil-Lehrer report, or do you want to watch Real Housewives of Beverly Hills? Because that's basically what you're choosing between.
It's interesting that he claims to be the smartest guy on earth, and yet he feigns total ignorance when you ask about QAnon, you ask about the Proud Boys. He's like, no, who are these people? I don't know about them. And it's like, you can't have it both ways. You can't be the smartest guy on earth and be the dumbest guy on earth.
But Alvin, you just said it. He's a narcissist. He's going to do whatever he wants to do to answer that question.
Right.
Plausible deniability, everything. He's going to imbue that into each and every one of those answers. And that's what you come out with. And then the people who support him, they accept it. I mean, that's but at the core of it, I believe that 95 to 99% of it has something to do with race.
It's funny. I was talking about,
if it's not that, it's abortion, it's sexual discrimination, and that's what it is.
I was talking.
Well, you know what? Go ahead,
Alan. Then Greg.
Real quick, I was talking to a friend last night, and maybe you get an understanding of the Trump supporters' mentality, because a friend said, "I hate Trump so much. If Biden shot somebody on Fifth Avenue, I'd still vote for Biden."
All right, Greg, go ahead.
That's interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, I think one of the things that we have to consider is that his base has actually gotten smaller. And I've never seen so many Republicans come out and say that, please don't vote for Trump. Even Rudy Giuliani's daughter, came out saying that kind of thing. I thought that was good too. So there's no way to believe that he hasn't lost people along the way. And the QAnon folks are just not going to be enough to make up for it. What disappoints me is that he's gained some ground among African American men, supposedly, allegedly, and it's not going into.
I read so.
Yeah, I mean it's to me, I see nothing but defiance there. But politically speaking, and from a PR perspective, Trump is turning into a disaster. I mean, he's just totally fumbled the ball, and it's which world do you want to live in? Like I said.
Well, and he's broke. From what I hear is Cam, Biden's got $350 million and Trump's got nothing. So, they say Biden can spend $20 million for every day for the rest of his campaign. And
can I suggest that he spend, say, $10 million of it with Deadline Detroit, because we could use a cash infusion.
Right. Hell yeah.
Oh boy.
That'd be good.
Hey, Greg brought up Rudy Giuliani. Can we talk about Rudy Giuliani for just a minute? Because Rudy Giuliani is at the center of this New York Post bombshell story that's out there that allegedly have some emails from Hunter Biden's laptops, which, I mean, everything about this story is just so bizarre to me. Like Hunter Biden's dropped
ridiculous. It's
three
ridiculous.
laptops with all sorts of sensitive material and alleged pictures of him with like drug paraphernalia and dick pics and all this kind of stuff. And he just drops it off some random computer shop in Wilmington, Delaware, and then never picks them up again.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow Rudy Giuliani gets a hand of this, gets a hold of these, and then leaks them, of course, to the New York Post. And now, of course, there's the big censorship discussion because Facebook and Twitter were both saying, well, we're not going to let you push this stuff because it hasn't been verified. No other media outlet is touching it because they can't verify whether or not any of this stuff is real. This was supposed to be the big October surprise. Trump has been waiting on a number of October surprises. None of them are coming to fruition. The other one, of course, the unmasking investigation, which fizzled out. They didn't even write a report about that one, which tells you something. The other one they're waiting on isn't going to happen before the election. Trump is now talking about potentially firing Bill Barr as a result of this. So
very angry at Barr now.
He's very angry.
Don't believe that.
Yeah, God, the guy couldn't find a crime and didn't charge anybody. How dare he follow the evidence? But this October surprise story that Rudy Giuliani somehow is involved in, my favorite part about it is that, basically people in national intelligence were warning the White House a month ago that there's somebody in Russia trying to feed Rudy a bunch of bullshit.
Right.
And Rudy's going to take it. And you guys should look at this. And of course, they ignored it and blew it off.
What explains the cognitive decline of Rudy Giuliani? I found one quote in a Vanity Fair story a few months ago that I think sums it all up. And it was from one of his aides. And it was very simple. And it said, he drinks heavily, very, very heavily.
Wow.
And,
thank God there's an explanation.
No, well, I just, and I mean, I don't want to call the guy drunk because, he hasn't fallen down or wet his pants on television yet. But I mean, what else explains this? I mean, this guy was, Alan, you covered the federal courts. I mean, is there a more high profile position in federal law enforcement than the
Southern District of New York? Right.
No, and he was the top dog there.
Right, right. You're a star. You're a star there. I mean, Preet Bharara, anyone who normally has that spot is a star.
Right, and he's become your crazy uncle.
I mean, but look at him. He looks like some out of the Gremlins. Like he dumped him in the water, and then he turned out like this. All those things about saying that he's drinking, those are excuses to explain the decline. That guy's been crazy forever. Think about what he did in the 80s and the people he prosecuted in the 80s. I mean, he did good work. I'm a defense attorney, so I still admire good prosecutorial work and things like that. He did great work with the mafiosos and things like that. And that's where I think he really made his bones. But going back after that, when he was running for president back when he used the platform of 9/11 to go off and try to catapult himself into presidency and things like that. I mean, the word reprobate can be used universally with some of these individuals, besides our president, but, and then look at the people that pal around with the president. They're all the same. I mean, these guys are they're trash. They're garbage. I guess I inundated and I say it in political, say it too often. But I mean, they're bad people. I'll put it like that. They've always have been.
Well, you got to watch out for this New York Post story because it can really have some troubling consequences down the road. The other papers and media outlets are running around trying to verify certain aspects of it. This idea that the tech companies have too much power and influence to censor stuff is going to get brought before the Senate, and Ted Cruz and the rest of those yo-yos are going to be there trying to make us believe that we're having a serious discussion about the credibility of the vice president. And so I'd like to be able to dismiss it and throw it away as a one-day story, but I promise you, when they get done voting for the Supreme Court justice here, they're gonna try and keep this thing front and center, and they're gonna try and use the institutions of government to somehow legitimize, Rudy Giuliani's crazy claims.
I was talking with a friend yesterday about this, and I have very mixed feelings. I mean, I'm obviously a big advocate of the First Amendment, and it's a little bit it's a little bit bothersome to see this sort of censorship. On the other hand, and maybe I'm hypocritical, and I think we all are entitled to a little hypocrisy. The fact that this stuff hasn't been verified, and how horrible would it be if this in fact was the tipping point and changed the direction based on something that we later find out is totally false and just made up. And so there's the danger of that. There's the danger of censorship. It's like, I don't know.
The tech companies are trying to exercise some responsibility, which they failed to show in 2016, correct?
Yes.
I mean, that's what they're trying to do. They don't want this to become another, QAnon or, Hillary or whatever.
Here's the problem, though. The problem with it is this one story. We've got thousands of stories with Trump. And this story is almost like how I feel as a defense attorney. The cops can get on there and they can lie. The prosecutors will lie. And then you find one discrepancy in the defense's story, and the jury's going to collapse on them. And this is the same thing they're doing to Biden. Has nothing to do with Biden. Let's say it's all true, and it's about his son. Has nothing to do with him. But they'll allow that. And see, that's what's wrong with America. They'll allow that because they will. I think deep down inside, there's a lot of people, particularly, like Greg said, even black males, but particularly white males who want to find a reason to support them. You know what I'm saying? I just I look at people differently.
Calm down.
I agree with Greg's dog.
Yeah.
Well, but
my neighbor here,
You say Trump and she goes crazy.
It's horrific that story could have legs and could change the dynamic of the election, which I agree with Greg.
I don't think it will. I think I think you have to look at it now. I mean, look, what is going to change? I mean, we're all pretty set on who we're going to vote for. I think the undecideds are far less a group than they were in 2016. I think Hillary was an unpopular figure. I think Trump was a little bit of an unknown. He had no record to defend. I think it gave way for greater indecisiveness among a bigger group of people. But I think this time, something like that, I mean, for all the garbage they have on Trump, I mean, it's endless. It's an endless stream. It's like, I don't know that one thing is going to be like, oh my God, maybe I have to rethink this. I'm always amazed. Like last night, there were some people going, there's so-and-so, and she's leaning toward, Biden, or she's leaning toward you, Mr. President. And I'm like, what is left to think about? I mean, the pandemic, the economy, the behavior of the childish behavior of this person. It's like, if you like that, go for it. If you think like, I mean, some people are it's on abortion, or in the Orthodox Jewish community, it's Israel, but if you're still undecided at this point, I'm sorry, you know what, you have to stay back another grade.
Well, obviously, last night watching the president still say we're turning a corner on COVID when all the evidence suggests the opposite is true.
We're turning a corner, the wrong corner.
Exactly. We're taking a left when we should be taking a right. I mean, it's just it's not going in the right direction, and so it's bizarre to me that people can hear that and look at the actual numbers and still say, well, I think he's got a handle on this thing. I just don't think he does. It doesn't exist. But all right, let's talk a little bit about it. I mentioned, we heard about abortion. Roe v. Wade obviously was a big topic of discussion this week because of the Supreme Court hearings for Justice Amy Coney Barrett, whether or not she's going to be seated on the Supreme Court. It looks like
whether or not
she will be, of course, unless something strange happens and we find out she actually is, somebody that's involved in some demonic pedophile cult.
She's the QAnon.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Stop it. I mean, look at, you got somebody like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell. I mean, those guys, they're caricature looking. You know what I mean? Like Mitch McConnell. I mean, these are the people. Well, Lindsey Graham is running the whole charade, and you know how this works. I mean, they got her. The nomination happened. But the benefit of all of this is that we might see a change in the Senate from this behavior that they did. Hopefully, Lindsey Graham will lose. That guy raised more money last quarter than any senator ever. $57 million. So
the latest poll shows him slipping a little bit.
You don't think the Feinstein hug is going to push him over the line?
But I mean, so like Nancy said, she's gonna get there. I mean, I don't care if they have QAnon on their background. It doesn't matter. They're gonna vote for her, and she's gonna get confirmed. And
she can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and still get confirmed.
I guess that's the question I really wanted to talk about, though, because we didn't really learn anything during these hearings other than she wasn't going to answer any questions. Her past writings speak volumes about where she's going to come down and this kind of stuff. We all know what she's going to do. And I guarantee you the Federalist Society knows exactly what she's going to do or else they wouldn't have put her name out there as a potential nominee. It seems as if this process has been hijacked by special interest groups that control the potential nominees, especially on the Republican side.
Did we learn anything about John Roberts during his confirmation hearing?
No.
I mean, the one thing, did we learn anything about Neil Gorsuch? The one thing you can say about Brett Kavanaugh's ordeal is at least we learned that he likes beer.
He likes beer.
Particularly when he was, a teenager, he liked to, to threaten girls with rape, and that's
and he's got friends named Biff.
Biff and Boof. Yeah,
I still think
Squish. Wasn't it Squish?
Go ahead.
Coney Barrett.
Go ahead, Greg. What'd you say? I'm sorry.
I still think there's more. There's better hope for having more judiciousness or some sound judgment from Kavanaugh than from Amy Coney Barrett. She is one way. She's smart. She knows how to put her position out there, and she's gonna go with that agenda, and she's gonna go harder. She's gonna be like Scalia on steroids.
She's gonna be worse than Scalia.
You have Alito. And you have Thomas, who are every single vote is always far to the right, regardless. And she's going to join that group. She's going to be unmovable. And it's funny. She would not answer any questions, even if is voter intimidation illegal? Well, I'd have to, review all the, arguments and talk with my. And it's like last night they had Al Franken on MSNBC, and he said, well, maybe they should ask her, is Grand Theft Auto, is that illegal?
I missed that guy.
Kamala Harris asked her those questions, kind of almost like in a syllogistic pattern. And, she made her point. She says, at one point, she said something like, it is, that's a political issue. She says, my point is made. She asked her some very basic questions. I don't know it's 3 or 4 questions that she asked her. And once she circled back around, she asked her really the question she wanted to ask her. And she says, oh, that's a political question. And then she says, my point is made. You're not going to get anything from this woman. This woman.
Can we just stop here and just say, I'm going to start cleaning my bathroom because apparently Greg is washing his dishes and getting away with it.
I'm just saying, don't let us interrupt your chores, Greg.
Hey, the dog's got to eat, man.
Apparently. But as the public, and this is a question that I've been asking for a long time. I started watching Supreme Court hearings really with gusto during the Thomas proceedings, of course, with Anita Hill and all that. But what are we as the public entitled to know about these people before they get put on the court? Should they have to answer these questions in some capacity?
I think so. It's a life position. Go ahead, Greg.
No. I mean, counselor, this is your bailiwick. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, that's just my point. It's a lifetime position. I mean, This is the highest court. When you talk about the branches of government, she is one of 9 that decide one aspect of the branch of government. And we vet the president. We know everything that they did. We know if they took a crap the day before.
We used to know those things about the president. We don't with this one.
Well, we know he's crazy, and that's all we need to know. We know he's a racist. We know, well, maybe not a racist, but a race baiter. We know that for a fact, because he says he's the most non-racist guy in the world, doesn't he say that?
I don't see race. Yeah, one of those guys.
Well, on the Supreme Court, one of the things that is really valuable, despite her not answering some questions directly, is that we're in the middle of an election season. They were obviously using this, particularly Senator Lindsey Graham, as an opportunity to talk to the folks back home. This is a way to appeal to voters, a sort of last chance in the midst of an election, letting them see you doing your job and doing it well. It kind of cuts both ways because every senator gets the opportunity to talk directly to the people at home. As it relates to her, and I think that what we saw was the ability for both sides to have a discussion without ripping each other's throats out. Now, I was impressed with some of the questions from the Democrats, and you really got to pay attention to what she's saying to understand, I think, what's going on. I mean, who was that said when she held up that piece of paper? Did anybody say that? She held up that piece of paper from the Senate. No. Remember, they asked her what did she have on her in front of her, and she had a Senate notepad, and there was nothing on the notepad. Yeah, when she held it up, and you know, it to me, that just said that, you know, hey, she's got this in the bag. She's not even bothering to take notes, to keep track of her thoughts or anything like that. On the other hand,
She's giving non-answers, though. I mean, you know, it's not like she's going deep into her legal philosophy answering these questions. I mean, you know, everything is, well, that's a very narrow, I would have to look at a very narrow slice of that and blah, blah, blah. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind what this woman is going to do on the court. She is going to sit as far to the right as possible. She may have to sit in Clarence Thomas's lap to do it, but she'll, you know, she'll put a phone book down like a good Catholic
Clarence
girl.
Thomas should be sitting in her box. She's way smarter than Clarence Thomas. You know.
Yeah, well, then he can sit on her lap, but then we may never hear from her again because he's
I think this.
But anyway, I mean, it's kind of like you know, this was part of my self-care regimen this week, which was not to pay attention to Amy Coney Barrett, because I already know everything I need to know. Why torture myself? It's the same reason I didn't watch either of the debates last night. I watched them on Twitter. And you know, I cast my ballot on Monday. Doesn't matter,
well,
you know.
I cast my ballot too, but Nancy, what you're saying is exactly what I find, you know, pretty troubling, and that is that with these hearings and the expectation that she's going to be a patsy for Trump should the election snafu or whatever happens comes before her.
Talk about a nightmare.
Really does bother me. Have we been living in a fantasy about the Supreme Court and thinking that the Supreme Court has always been some kind of neutral arbiter of justice?
Greg,
I don't think we've ever.
Don't get me wrong. I'm bothered too, and I mean it is. I mean the one justice who seems to have a grasp of this right now is John Roberts, who's saying he doesn't want the court to become political, because once the court becomes political, overtly political, which it is certainly headed in that direction, the next step is court packing, you know, and it's like,
well, you know, I'm completely impressed. I mean, although he was a Republican pick, I am lately in the past couple of years impressed with John Roberts, who I believe is a legal purist or becoming that. But I also mentioned, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago on, you know, I think that John Roberts is at the point where he's starting to think about his legacy. What am I leaving behind? And, you know, not to make this political, not to do the things that, you know, exactly what I'm not supposed to be here doing. I'm going to try to do that. And, you know, you look at some of the decisions, we know what branch of, you know, we know what partisan people who put him there. He hasn't fallen in line with that. And I'll say this much, even though I think that he's kind of got some, you know, some real problems from a character perspective, I think Kavanaugh, I'm prayerful that Kavanaugh, because he's had some decisions recently in the past year that didn't fall in line with what a lot of people thought he was going to do. But Amy Coney Barrett, I have no doubt in my mind. She's going
the two most hopeless are Alito and Thomas. They never vary. They never, if there's going to be two votes, if it's 7-2, and there's a very, very conservative
They'll
side,
be the two.
They'll be the two. And, you know, it's interesting. These guys, you know, she comes off, I'm a constitutionalist, I'm a contextualist or whatever, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's such nonsense. And I'll go back real quick to when I lived in Washington, D.C., friends of mine, their son was going to Stanford, and they had the Stanford House in D.C. where students would come for a semester or whatever. And one of the son, I took him out for dinner after he went. Justice Scalia visited the Stanford House and talked about what a constitutionalist he is. And this kid is telling me, oh my God, he says he goes by the law. And I said, Ethan, why do you think they issue opinions? I said, they're called opinions. And you know, these people are, you know, she's pretending like, oh, I'm going to do everything by the law. But it's like, you know, the contextualists or whatever, it's like the Quran, where some people, you know, they pick and choose. They'll say, like, you know, thou shalt smite anyone who says, you know, speaks badly of Muhammad. And at the same time, the Quran says, thou shalt not kill. But people pick and choose. And these people are going to, you know, she's going to pick and choose so that it conforms to her very ultra-right conservative, you know, agenda.
Well, you know what? And this is exactly why we need to stop pretending like the courts aren't political. If you weren't convinced in Bush versus Gore that of the political nature of the Supreme Court, or reminded of it, then certainly you should be reminded of it when you have Clarence Thomas speaking outside of the court saying we need to revisit the whole gay marriage thing and this other kind of stuff. And if you aren't convinced that the courts are political, then you need to look back at the history of the courts and how they upheld things like slavery, things like, the anti-civil rights legislation, all this stuff. To me, it seems as if when we have made strides in Brown versus Board of Education, in equality, in gay rights, gay marriage, those are exceptions to the rule, not the rule itself. And so I think that with Amy, we need to begin to take the blinders off of our eyes and say, hey, we understand what this animal is. And if we're really going to make a change and make the Supreme Court the court that we want it to be, then we need to have a discussion about expanding the Supreme Court.
Well, I think that's a minefield for Biden at this point in time. Sure. He did say he was going to have a more established position by Election Day. I don't know why he committed himself to that. I don't think he should have. Right. But at the same time, we'll see. I mean, could there be more justices on the Supreme Court at some point? Hasn't been tried since Roosevelt was in office, but you never know.
Biden,
all
Biden had to say is, I don't think it's a great idea, but I don't want to make any decisions at this point.
I will look at it if I think the court's independence is being threatened in some capacity.
Or just saying, hey, I don't rule it out. I can't rule it out. I don't think it's a great idea, but I can't rule it out at this point.
But isn't it up to the Senate to do that?
Well,
how does that work?
They got to win the Senate. They got to win. The Congress would do it, and then the president would sign it into law, make the appointments. And that's
and then if he vetoes it, then they have to have a super majority of some kind. But what he could say is, I'll organically address that as it sees fit. They use these terms now, and do the same thing. I wouldn't say do the same thing that Trump does, but he's putting himself in a position where now he's going to have to answer that question, and anybody in media is going to try to force him to answer that question before the election.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Hey, Todd,
if it was up to me, I'd add 2 seats, and the first one would go to Merrick Garland. Just be like, just do it. Make it 11,
right? Just for
and you're
payback.
going to have potential 6-5, but then
one.
you got to swing. At least got a swing possibility.
I mean, folks, this lady, Amy Coney Barrett, only has 3 or 4 years on the federal bench. How do you rise to the level of the Supreme Court with only 3 or 4 years on the federal bench working as a judge?
Didn't you just answer that question? You just said it's political, didn't you?
Well, you don't have to be a judge. You don't have to be a judge to be on the Supreme Court. I mean,
48 years old. She'll be there for 30 years.
But you don't even have to be a lawyer to be on the Supreme Court. Anybody can be nominated to the Supreme Court. So, I mean, it's possible. But the interesting thing is, one thing I will say about her writings clearly tells me that at a few years ago, back in say 2013, 2014, she didn't ever expect to be in a position where she's going to be nominated to the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
you don't write that stuff if you know that it's going to come up and potentially
John
bite
Roberts,
you later.
Son of privilege, who was basically groomed from the Supreme Court. He's like Prince. I've been listening to this podcast on Princess Diana, and they a couple of times they've emphasized that she was a virgin well into her later teens, and because she was banking on becoming, the Princess of Wales. And so I think this is what John Roberts is doing. Whereas you're absolutely right, Craig. Amy Coney Barrett was just a warrior for God, and then was suddenly, oops.
Wow. It's interesting to me that
she lost her ideological virginity a long time ago.
I will say this. Speaking of, though, one thing that I think would be a good change for the court, I do like the fact that we have a nominee who's not from the Ivy League for once. I understand those are great schools, but there are other places out there that people get good educations.
And I'm pretty sure, I think I read this somewhere when Kavanaugh was nominated, that the reason she was the number 2 choice for the Kavanaugh spot, but Trump didn't like the fact that she only taught at that hick cow college, Notre Dame, and hadn't gone to the, Notre Dame is some, it's easy to get into Notre Dame. He's got that, Ivy League.
Well,
did you guys catch Amy when she was talking about? Did you guys catch Amy when she was talking about race, and she talked about her Black adopted daughters and how she held them, and she had some tough conversations, and they
cried together over George Floyd.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I believe that.
What did you think of that?
Are you talking
Yeah.
about Coney Barrett?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, but did you see how she has her black son's hair cut? I mean,
I
that
did
kid's
not.
got to be I mean, this is. I mean, you know, you just totally thrown any kind of integrity he may have or street cred that he may want to get in school. And I'm using street cred as far as just coolness or whatever the case may be. This kid looks like they put a bowl on his head and just shaved it around. And haircuts are getting. I mean, they try not to make their kids part of this process, but he was at the Rose Garden too. And I was looking at some of the jokes that you could see online that where people were talking about this black kid's haircut.
Wow. So basically, how to get your ass kicked every day at school.
But you know what?
Exactly.
You know what?
Well,
I mean, I wanted to believe Amy, but there's a bit of pandering that goes on there. Why you drag your kids to these proceedings, if not to show them off, if not to curry favor?
How many times were we told that she has 7 kids? You have 7 beautiful children. Aren't your children beautiful? What a beautiful family. Over and over and over again. So I only have.
How do you do it? How do you have 7 kids and work?
You bring your family. You bring your family to an event like that in case anybody wants to go off on you. You turn and go, "Excuse me, my kids are here."
Right.
You realize if you've got 7 kids, your bill at the McDonald's drive-thru is likely about $120. Think about that for just a second.
I never thought that they might be going to McDonald's. They probably go to Eddie V's for lunch.
All right,
I mean,
we got to move on. We've got to move on.
As a Detroiter, I mean, we have to love that she has the name Coney.
Well, there's Coneys and then there's Coneys. I mean,
right.
Is it Coney?
Coney we don't want. We don't want that Coney.
All right, we got to move on. I do want to spend a little time on the other side of the country just because this was such a bizarre story this week. If anybody has been paying attention to what's going on in Anchorage, Alaska, the mayor just resigned in disgrace the other day. This is the weirdest freaking story I've seen in a long time. Okay, so apparently the mayor of Alaska has a sexting relationship with a local TV anchor, which goes south at some point.
As one does.
Doesn't work. This anchor finds out from the mother of an escort that her daughter, who had been working as an escort, may have been escorting the mayor around. And she was like 18 years old. And that the mayor had put up a profile on this site that goes after underage girls, which didn't happen. The actual escort came out and said, "No, not the guy I was dating, not the right guy." But the anchor of this TV station, rightly indignant about the fact that maybe this guy was a pedophile, calls up and leaves a message on his answering machine like, "Hi, I'm such and such from Channel 8 News in Alaska," and then goes on this amazingly bizarre anti-Semitic rant saying that she's going live on the news with this. In the meantime, she's so crazy that her boyfriend, who is the station manager, has an argument with her that day, kicks her out of the car in the middle of the street to drop her off, and then fires her and says, "You can't come back." She gets arrested for trespassing at the station, makes this angry phone call to the mayor. She gets arrested. The mayor then resigns because they find out there was an actual sexting relationship between this anchor and the mayor. So he's forced to step down.
So she's dating her program director,
station manager.
the station manager, and sexting with the mayor at the same time.
Yes.
This is a girl who always likes to have a plan B, obviously.
Well, and then
this is the place where Sarah Palin is from, so remember that.
The message she left,
suburban Anchorage. Okay,
the message she left.
I
said, and the message she left on his phone, which I mean, okay, it's one thing if you're going to accuse somebody of being a pedophile, but then, toss in the anti-Semitism for a little extra juice there, because she's like, "You Zionist effing jerk," and freaking Jew, stuff like that. And it's all swearing and it's all recorded. Funny. And I'm like, hell hath no fury like an anti-Semite scorned.
Like a sexting anti-Semite.
There you go. Go ahead, Alan.
I just want to say real quickly, when you mentioned Sarah Palin, when she was running in 2008, I was talking to I was in DC. I called my mother and we're talking, and my mother said, "That Sarah Palin, she thinks she's such a big shot, but you know what? If I lived in Alaska, I could be a big shot too."
Yeah, it doesn't take much to be a big shot.
Doesn't take much to be a big
now,
shot.
do we know whether perhaps the anti-Semitic sexting was part of the mayor's kink?
Wow.
You know, that it was like, you know, it was like, you little worm. It's like you crawl
What, is she
over
dressing
here
up like a
and you go,
Nazi with a crop and stuff
yeah,
like
yeah,
that?
she's like Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS, that kind of thing, you know.
Wow.
And that might have been
Wow.
that might have been
Please,
the thing.
please play out my Ava Braun fantasy. I mean, come on now. Jeez. That's really warped. But I'm sure it's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. That, by the way, if you have
That's
not
a
heard
minute
this,
of my life I can't get back. You made me
just
listen to that.
go listen to the recording. I was gonna play the recording, then I realized I have to put the family banner on this one, and I don't want to do that. But it is a really bad piece of tape, and just very strange. But this woman's career, needless to say, is likely over as a news anchor anywhere.
She can still work at Deadline Detroit. I would be happy to sit next to her, and we have an actual our co-founder or our founder here. I have to go the other way. Is actually is Jewish himself, and he can school her with his stories about his parents and growing up in Oak Park and everything.
Right, the Holocaust.
We'll have her speaking Yiddish with the rest of us.
It's the re-education, the Deadline Detroit re-education camp.
Right.
I have learned enough Yiddish in the last 2 years that I really feel as though I could go into any old shtetl and, like, you know, find the bathroom.
Right. You
Go ahead.
You can be
what do you got?
in the
You're wrong, Craig, though. This woman might have a career in the Trump administration, though.
Ooh,
Right.
OAN might be higher end.
It's gonna be the next press secretary.
When Kayleigh McInerney bails out, you know, 2 weeks before the transition starts, she can take
All
over.
right. We've got to move on. We've been going for a long time. We definitely need to get to Schmuck of the week.
Oh my goodness.
And I've got one. How about if I go first this time, just because it might be easier? My Schmuck of the week is Nebraska Senator Ben Sass. Now, Ben Sass is a very, very conservative member of the U.S. Senate. He's a very religious guy. He's got a PhD in history from Yale, and we heard him wax quite eloquently about democracy all this week during the judicial hearings for Coney Barrett, excuse me. And he, though, was on a phone call with some Republican donors in Nebraska, and one of them said, "Why do you not always stick up for Donald Trump?" And he said what he should have been saying out loud about Donald Trump all the time. Here's what he said. He said, "I'm not at all apologetic for having fought for my values against his in places where I think his are deficient, not just for a Republican, but for an American." He said, you know, he's like, "We're about to have a Republican bloodbath because of this guy." And he said, you know, one of the things people are going to ask is, what the heck were any of us thinking that we're selling a TV obsessed, narcissistic individual to the American people was a good idea? So basically, he rips on him, says he coddles up to dictators. He's horrible with women. He cozies up to white supremacists. He says all this on this phone call. And of course, the Washington Examiner gets the tape and runs it. And I'm thinking to myself, hey, that's great, Ben, but say this stuff out loud. You didn't vote to get rid of the guy during the impeachment hearings that were going on in your house. You basically gave him a green light to put these, to get this next thing in there. Had you been saying this since the beginning and said it loudly, we might not be where we are today.
How did they translate that from the original rat language that it was spoken in, the high pitched squeaking? You know, and it's like that is the sound of a rat who is all the way at the end of the gangplank and is looking down at the water, going, "I better go for it because this ship is going down."
I mean,
Ben Nancy, Sass, are you from Indiana? You are like knifing them up here.
Look, Ben Sass is basically a never Trumper. He is a Lincoln Project guy. He clearly is, but he just didn't have the courage to say it out loud. And now he's on the record. And of course, he's getting called a rhino and all that kind of stuff.
Oh.
But you know what? Who cares? Stand up for it. Stand up for what you freaking believe in. Say it out loud. I've been doing it for years, but maybe if you would have said something, some of my Republican friends may have soaked in the idea that the guy in the office is unfit. So Ben, speak up next time. Do it in public.
Go ahead.
All right. That's my Schmuck of the week, Ben Sass. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Nancy.
I was going to give Rudy Giuliani, but since we already went over Rudy Giuliani, I'm going to go with Bill Barr. Because this week, the United States Justice Department filed suit against Stephanie Wolford Winston. She's one of these three, Melania's ex-BFF, the one who has the tell-all book with the tapes and everything else, over breach of a confidentiality agreement
I have those with all my friends.
This is like WTF. It's like, why is the Justice Department filing suit in what should be a private matter between two private individuals? I'm sorry. This is
Amen.
Well, but
insane.
Bill Barr,
He's weaponized.
This is exactly. This is Belarus Banana Republic BS.
But Bill Barr had to get back in the good graces of Donald Trump by doing this, because remember, he brought the unmasking investigation went nowhere, and the other investigation they're doing about the so-called spying on the Trump campaign isn't going to be ready before the election, which Donald Trump wanted. Donald Trump actually went on, what was it? I can't remember what show it was the other day. Oh, it was with Red State or Breitbart, one of the two, was doing an interview, and he said that Bill Barr might not be back in the next administration because he's very upset with him.
He had better get to the end of that gangplank and start planning his dive too, because
I would agree.
They're all good. The FBI director, after FBI director Christopher Wray is supposed to have a 10-year term. He'll be gone if Trump were to get reelected.
Well, he said something about that yesterday as well. So anyway, Bill Barr, if you're listening, Bill, which I doubt you are, but if you are listening, it is time to start planning your exit. Find a way to get out of here as gracefully as possible, because your reputation's already close to destroyed. You could salvage what little bit of dignity you have left by getting out now. All right, who is the next nominee?
I'll go. Go ahead, Greg.
Go ahead, Greg.
All right, my nominee is closer to home. The Roseville City Councilman Charles Frontera.
Yeah.
I'm a Democrat. This guy's a Democrat. He's been charged with running a drug house on city council.
City council.
And
he claimed it was the tenants, didn't he? That were the ones selling and using the crack.
I don't know. I've been trying to follow it on Deadline.
I tend to believe him. I think they may have been. Who knows? He may have been doing crack, and they may have been running out of the house, and he just let it go. And they said, "All right, we're going to charge you, and you better flip on these guys." And that's my
Todd is the best defense attorney this side of the Mississippi, and I'm sure that he could probably do a lot to help this guy. But from his position as a public official, I think that this guy needs to take some other steps to reassure the public of his innocence. And at the very least, he probably should be stepping aside while he deals with this. I don't know. These are odd times, because now when people get charged with stuff and they're elected, they stay. They don't leave.
Gabe Leland's been charged 2 years ago or something. He's still sitting on the council, voting on contracts.
Well,
and it was anything at this point. But this guy in Roseville, granted, like we talk about it, you're innocent until proven guilty. But again, as a public official, we do owe something to the public. Perception is reality. The court of public opinion is harder to win than a court of law. So to his plight. I go with Alan. I mean, if this is a rental property, it's very possible that this could happen, and maybe he could take some accountability to the extent that maybe I didn't vet my tenants well enough, or I didn't watch and monitor my property. That could very well be the case. But no, it's I would consider what Greg is saying. If I was his lawyer, I'd want to do it all the way right. I want to make sure that the public recognizes I do have some responsibility to the city where I live. And, hey, to the extent that I'm not guilty and it didn't have anything to do with it, still, that doesn't mean that I will not have responsibility.
Well, laws on the books in Michigan do allow for forfeiture of drug houses. If you're a landlord and you don't monitor what's happening on your property, get busted a couple of times, you can lose that house. And so that is something that we learned when I worked for the city. Yeah. All right, Todd Perkins gets to go last for Schmuck of the Week.
I didn't do mine yet, but go ahead.
Alan didn't do his.
No, Todd, go ahead, and I'll be last.
I had two. I'll do them real quick. But Schmuck of the Week is actually the Taylor Police Department. The Taylor Police Department, they are, if you saw the story this week, they take my client and they snatch him out of his car. They lie in their police reports. I'm writing a letter to Dana Nessel, to the state police, to Benny Napoleon. I'm writing to all of them why these individuals who then, the prosecutor signs the warrant without looking at the video. So 2 months later, which cases take a lot longer now, 2 months later, it comes to court and they still testify. And only when the judge sees the video and he tells the guy, after tasing this guy who's being held down by 6 officers and them dry stun tasing him 3 or 4 times, which was completely unnecessary, one cop tells him, "Welcome to Taylor." So the chief of police tells Heather Cataldo, "Hey, we dealt with this internally, that we've been reprimanded and things of that nature. But why would you let these individuals then go into court under oath and testify completely inconsistent with the video versus what's in their reports? They've lied." So now it's on them to be held accountable and held to task. They should go to jail for what they did. So,
all these cops think they're in an action movie. Welcome to Taylor. Yeah, it's like, oh,
well,
so
Taylor, the only reason a lot of people in Metro Detroit even know where Taylor is because they actually patrol the freeway just so they can get extra money out of people for speeding tickets.
Well,
thank you, Taylor.
Yeah,
it's a nice little speed trap they have on 75 there. You will find it if you're going too fast in that little section. Yeah. So yes, Taylor, wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, Todd, you said you had 2 or just was that the one?
And then the next one is my neighbor. You know, he's a dentist. You know, this guy's got money. You know, and I have a Black Lives Matter sign out there. So, you know, the underlying themes is Black Lives Matters has been, it's promoted, it's been prompted and pushed into the limelight. Whereas 4 years ago, people would say, "Yeah, Black Lives Matter, all lives matter." People see the necessity of saying Black Lives Matter, and we know the underlying theme is that it's the police that have caused this, us to really be conscious of the Black Lives Matter movement because of what they've done and the atrocities that they've done to Black people. So he then goes out and gets a sign that says "Support the police." He doesn't understand who he's playing with. So I call William Madison, who puts me in touch with Sawicki, who makes the signs, the political signs. So I have coming to Grosse Pointe Shores a 5x5 sign Black Lives Matter. So, I might get a ticket, I might not. And if they tell me to move it, I'll just put it right on my doorstep because they can't stop me from doing that. And then paint my windows Black Lives Matter because I don't even live here anymore. I live in Oakland County, but I still keep this house.
Hey, so fences are good too.
That's my schmuck of the week.
All right. Okay. The dentist next door. I love it.
Do you have a Trump sign out there?
Yeah, he got a Trump sign next to the button, "Support the police." This clown, so I should go over and kick his ass, but that's all right.
Well, we'll get Fishman lined up for you in case that happens because you might need
Fishman right now.
You need some representation if you go beat his ass. All right. I think I might know who your neighbor is, but we'll talk about that in just a minute after we're off the air. All right, Alan, what do you got?
I have to say, even though I've been a fan of hers for a long time, Diane Feinstein. I thought, how horrible was it? I mean, you could have been polite. I get that. You could have said, "Thank you for, thanks for running the committee," and that would have been a grand gesture in itself. But to just heap praise on Lindsey Graham for running that hearing that was so awful that he is so hypocritical and helping steal that seat, and to applaud him, and that he may then use that in his campaign to show, "Hey, I'm, look at me. I got a Democrat who loves me. I work across the aisle." I think
that is the most pathetic Southern accent I've ever heard.
Oh, come on.
I was pretty impressed with it.
Do you have community theater experience in your background by any chance?
He goes on Fox all the time. "Please, they're pouring so much money in this race against me. I need your help.
Help me. Help me, Fox."
Maybe it's from watching, Andy and Mayberry. I don't know. But
well, that's North Carolina, though. That's northern North Carolina. Way different accent than what Lindsay's got down there in Charleston.
Yeah.
So, all right. We got to wrap it up, everybody. I want to say thanks to my guests, of course, Todd Perkins. We appreciate it. And hopefully we are not seeing your mugshot in the paper anytime soon for an assault charge. Thank you for being here. Greg Bowens, always a pleasure, my friend. Hopefully the dog is doing well. By the way, what is the dog's name, sir?
Coco. She just rang the bell so I could let her out. We got these bells on the door.
Oh, wow.
There you go. Gotta love Coco. All right. Very good. Alan Langle, thank you for being here, sir, once again.
Thank you.
Nancy Derringer, as always, we appreciate it.
In the Craig Foley Memorial Chair at Deadline Detroit World Headquarters.
It is my
That's
former
where I am
spot,
sitting.
isn't it?
Yes,
Oh, there you go. I haven't been to the
All right.
office and I don't know how long.
It's been a
So
while for me too.
I like my bunker here. I want to thank my friend Michael Lucido for engineering this broadcast today. Thank you, Michael. We always appreciate it. The newly shorn Michael Lucido. He should put the camera on for just a second so people can see this new haircut that the man got. I mean, geez.
Wow.
He went extreme.
He's bringing sexy back.
He's going to be infiltrating the skinheads this week. So we appreciate it. That make sure you get that camera, the little one that you can hide somewhere so you can actually hear what these guys have to say. Thanks, Michael, for doing this. Also, special thanks to James Oliver Coffee for their support of this program. JamesOliverCoffee.com. Don't forget, use the promo code CF Show to get 15% off your first order from them. A Detroit-based coffee roaster right there on Davison on the east side. So we appreciate them very, very much. And also, DeadlineDetroit.com. We wouldn't be able to do this without DeadlineDetroit.com. Consider a membership at Deadline. We bring you important stories each and every day. Really good original reporting. We aggregate the best stuff as well so you know what's happening in your town. Support it. Become a member today. DeadlineDetroit.com/membership. It's easy to do. As little as $3 a month to keep this thing going. So thanks, everybody. Have a fantastic weekend. And Alan.
All right. Stay home safely.
My name's ML Elric. I'm an investigative reporter and a connoisseur of fine yogurts. I know a little bit about Detroit. I know a little bit about deadlines. And I'm asking you to become a member of DeadlineDetroit.com. Like me, I'm not asking you to do anything I wouldn't do. I'm making a monthly donation. My wife is making a monthly donation. I know that seems redundant, but they need the money, and the money goes to a good place. Getting the story out, getting the truth out. Because if we don't support local journalism, there's some people a couple blocks away from here who are going to get away with a whole bunch of stuff that's going to cost you a whole lot more than just a few bucks out of your pocket every month. Go to DeadlineDetroit.com, become a member. You'll see it's really easy at the top of the website. Give early, give often, give generously. Just give a damn. That's the best way I know how.
The Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit is sponsored by James Oliver Coffee Company at JamesOliverCoffee.com. James Oliver is a second-generation family-owned and Detroit-based coffee roaster offering 19 different blends of freshly roasted coffee. The company pioneered link temperature roasting, and they source the best beans from around the world to create an outstanding coffee experience no matter which beans you choose. To start, try the Alma Mater blend. James Oliver Coffee gives $5 for each bag of its alma mater blend to the Detroit Public Schools Foundation. And don't forget, use the promo code CFSHOW, that's CF Show, to get 15% off your first order. James Oliver Coffee, available at select grocery stores in Metro Detroit and, of course, at JamesOliverCoffee.com. Remember, use the promo code CFSHOW to get 15% off your first order. That's JamesOliverCoffee.com.